Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Brian Doyle, and we are here with the latest installment of MSP Business School. With me today is Rob Rogers, my fellow co-host. And once again, we are missing one of the legs on the tripod, man. This is becoming a little bit of a habit from you OSR guys.
I don't know. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's all I'm saying.
People are just consistently stuck with me, though. You know, that seems to be the constant. But anyhow, that said, nobody's really here for either one of us, Rob. As we know, they come for our guests. And
Definitely.
Today I'm really excited to introduce Travis Barker from Easy IT Solutions. He's joining us today. And I met Travis briefly at one of James Kernan, who's been a friend of the show and been on with us in the past, at one of his mastermind events, and had an opportunity to talk to Travis in more detail. We had some other pass bys in the prior to that, but it was good catching up face to face, and I'm excited that we were finally able to get Travis to join us here on the show. So welcome, Travis.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
So, Travis, we want to kick things off with learning a little bit more about the people that we're talking to. So, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your history and how you found your way into IT, and specifically as the CEO of Easy IT.
So I would say that it started at a very young age. I love to play video games. So, I'm a little bit older, but, when I was 4 or 5, Nintendo was kind of a new thing. And so growing up, I played video games and kind of just gravitated towards technology in general. I remember my grandma had an old DOS machine that we wound up putting Windows 3.1 on, and we would play DOS games and, do some of that fun stuff. Very fun for me. So basically all throughout school, growing up, I'm thinking, okay, I want to make video games when I get older. Finally, when I was 14 and I had a computer of my own, so to speak, not mine, but I was perusing the web and I found a kid that had made a JavaScript game and just had a little hosted website from his ISP, and he put his Yahoo Messenger handle on there. So this, again, if people remember Yahoo Messenger, kind of date myself here.
Yeah.
So I'm like, me being the brave, innocuous 14-year-old that I am, I sent a message and said, hey, this is really cool. How do I do this? And the kid lived in Texas. I still remember his name. His name was Jimmy Ruska. And he taught me HTML and JavaScript over Yahoo Messenger for about 6 months. So then after that, I started to dive into programming and doing a few other things. So for my 15th birthday, I wanted a PHP programming book. And that's what I did after school. Was I did programming basically every day until I was 18. So wanted to go to college. The 2 colleges I looked at was Full Sail, and I believe it's in Florida, and then UAT in Arizona. But what no one told me, because I kind of had a rough childhood, I moved out when I was 15. No one told me that you had to take the ACT or the SAT or apply to go to college.
Which is even sadder because now it almost doesn't matter at any school you apply to.
Right, it's optional.
I've got one looking at college right now, and it's such an optional thing, but for all of us old guys.
Yeah.
So I can look back and laugh now, but like I'm 18 and I'm going back to my senior year in school, and everyone's like, oh, I did all this. I went to these colleges. Did you apply? And everyone asked me these questions. Like, I have no idea what the hell you guys are talking about. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
certainly are.
So that was immediately not an option for me, and I couldn't afford it anyway. So started talking to my grandpa. My grandpa was like, hey, I did the Navy thing. Go do the Navy. Like, I don't want to join the military. Just not really feeling it. It was not my thing. We actually stayed up one night talking until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning about his military experience, and he was trying to talk me into it. And the very next day, a recruiter called. So, and I'd like, bull crap. I'm like, you call them. You're baiting me. I scored pretty high on the ASVAB. So, and I'm assuming that's why they reached out, but they did call. So I went down, did that whole thing. And the recruiter's like, you can do whatever you want in the military that you can do in the civilian world. I'm like, I want to make video games. Like, I don't know if we have that, but we'll go to MEPS and we'll go through this process, and then you can talk to them. And getting down there, and I told the guy, I'm like, I want to make video games. Like, what can I do? And he's like, well, we have IT. That's kind of like this technology-ish. It was IT and crypto. And I thought, yeah, so I guess sign me up. I got nothing else to do and go to college now. So this is the direction I went. And that's kind of what started all of it, I guess.
That's fantastic.
Very convoluted story to get to that point. Sorry, but
no, not at all. It's always unique to see how we all get to technology. I fell into it. I'll be the first guy to admit to that. I don't know about you, Rob.
Oh yeah, 100%. Was not even on my radar.
Oh yeah.
My degree's in medical biology.
At least your degree
wasn't even close.
At least you can be proud of your degree, Rob. I'm a communication major, and literally the first company I went to work for was called Total Communications. I guess it was just kismet. But anyhow, Travis, so that's awesome. And look, first, thank you for your service, of course. But realistically, one of the things that I've seen is the military teaches that discipline, right, and really can set you up almost better than college in some respects for doing things like taking on the challenge of being a business owner. So kudos to you, man. Yeah. Sometimes the mistakes in life end up being the greatest things that happen, right?
Yes, looking back, I'm glad that it happened the way that it did.
Yeah. I definitely agree. My military time I am very, very proud of my military time. The degree, it's a piece of paper that I needed. Yeah. Right. It just wasn't that important to me at all.
Got us the first job and probably not the second.
Right. Right. My military time was my MBA for me. Like that's how I look at it. I did it backwards. Like I went to military first, but it was good times.
Yes.
So let's transition. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, so what's your next question?
Well, I was gonna say, let's transition a little bit and talk about what you're doing today. So, roughly how long have you been doing Easy IT?
My business will be 9 years old, June of this year.
Awesome. Congrats.
Which started by happenstance. I did not intend to start a business when I started a business.
Another story we hear very often. So what's your origin story?
Well, so when I got done with the military, I wanted a job in IT, but no one would give me a job in IT because I didn't have a degree. So it's like, oh, you have all this experience, but you don't have that piece of paper. It's like that chicken and egg story.
Yep.
Right. It's like, and then you see it on the other side too. Well, you got the piece of paper, but you don't have any experience. So I thought, okay, I'll go to school. So I got a job. Thankfully, they would pay for some of my college. So I started taking night classes for 7 years because the company I wanted to work for wouldn't give me a job in IT. Did that for a long time. Somewhere in there, I want to say about 2 or 3 years before I quit, we had a local shop here, and I was working on computers kind of in the spare time, just because the community. I live in a very small community, and the community needed help. The guy that had a business here charged a lot. I thought kind of treated the people unfairly, and I kind of always wanted to start my business. I guess I actually was going to start it when I was 21, but my then wife, she's not my ex-wife, but her parents told me not to, because her whole family owns businesses and my whole family owns businesses. And they're like, no, don't do it. You don't want to do this. So I kind of talked myself out of it.
Travis, that's interesting. Why would they, just because it's so risky? What did they?
Risk, insurance, things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Just the startup terribleness.
Yeah. We were expecting at the time too. So,
okay.
Wound up not working, but finally, there was a guy in our community that owned several businesses, was very successful, wanted me to come work on his computer. And he wrote me a check, and he wouldn't put my name in it. And I mean, looking back now, it's so silly because I could have just wrote my name in the check. But he says, don't cash this until you have a business name. And so, I think, looking back now, it's like wanting to do it. The first hurdle was really just starting it. I feel like we create so many hurdles and oh man, I don't know how to start a business. But really all you got to do is say, I'm in business. It's not that hard.
Here in Connecticut, it's about $150 and a piece of paper.
So, and that was the start of it. So I did that. And then I realized just worked on computers, the residential stuff, out of my basement for a few years. Well, it got to a point where I didn't want people just dropping computers off at my house every day of the week. So I rented an office space. And then all of a sudden, it was too busy for me to do my real job and do that at the same time. And it's like, okay, now I really need to figure something out. And this is where my story gets kind of interesting, because I enlisted a partner. So I'm like, hey, I've got some of the cash flow now. I'm going to rent a space. You want to help me out? Sure. We partnered up, gave him 5% of the business to do this. And, it worked out for a while. But that next year we did $125,000. So third year in business, we did 125 grand between two people. Wasn't bad. About this time, the company that I'm working for came to me and said, hey, you've proven yourself now. We want to give you a job in IT. And I'm like, you can take your job and shove it.
Right.
And the reason why was because I didn't have my degree yet. Right. So I'm like, you told me I couldn't have a job because I didn't have a degree. So little known secret, I am 3 classes away from getting my bachelor's degree. And now I don't get it clearly out of spite.
Right.
Because I like to be the guy when I go to a career fair and say, hey, you can be successful without the piece of paper. Right. At this point, I'm proving a point, because I don't want it. I don't need it to be successful.
Right.
And I don't like the narrative that you have to go to college. You have to go to college. So I kind of want to be the anti-voice to that.
There's becoming more and more of those anti-voices out in the market.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that started, right? And then that story gets interesting. So from there, I did not work full-time in my business. I actually got offered a director of IT position for another company in my small little town that does over $100 million of business. And so I managed that. I was on staff there for a few years while my business grew. And then eventually we got to the point where it's like, okay, I can't do both.
Yep.
It became unfeasible. We were growing too fast. We were growing 50% year on year. And so I went to my boss, and I said, hey, this is what's going on. He knew I had a business. He knew I was growing it. He was very supportive. He's very entrepreneurial. And we had we had a very candid conversation. And I said, hey, you don't need to, and I had a staff of 3 people there underneath me. And I said, you don't need us. I mean, let's cut your wages way down, because when we first started out there, we had a lot of stuff to do. So we hired the people to bring them up to snuff. I'm like, you don't need us anymore. Let's cut your bill in half. We'll service you as a contractor. And then overnight, my break fix business turned into an MSP.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we had 6-7 employees, and we were off to the races.
That's awesome. And it's amazing when you work out in the marketplace and you find some of those entrepreneurial spirits that are open to that. You can make those kinds of transitions that kind of change life, right? And really set the course. And it's got to be also a little bit comforting to know that you're able to keep some of that revenue when you came into the new spot too, to take a little bit of the edge off, as they say, right?
Yeah, it gave us the confidence that we're going in the right direction, because at that point we went to all of our break fix customers and we converted them to managed clients.
Ooh, let's unpack that a little bit. So, one of the problems that I see MSPs have is switching that whole contract basis, right? The first one was break fix to MSP. That was a tough one.
Yep.
How did you guys do it? Was it just a line in the sand and you sold the value and the savings? Like, what did you do?
Yep. So, oh man, I'll be honest, there are so many mistakes. And looking back, if I'm telling people that are growing or trying to figure this out, at the end of the day, you almost have to make the mistakes, because I did ungodly amounts of research, not wanting to repeat people's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I joined, I don't know how many different IT groups on Facebook, and understanding what MSP was. Like, I tried to sell MSP in my little town, not knowing what MSP was. And, but then learning and understanding how it's supposed to be. When we finally realized that this was the direction we wanted to go, and we had the staff for it, And staff is really irrelevant. You know, we kind of had that jump start. But I think the very first thing is you have to understand that not everyone's going to get on board. And that was our very biggest fear, was loss of revenue.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm from a very small town. So I built my business in a community of 3,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. Sheesh.
But and so for us, it was really scary because you know, for we were essentially going to kill off our residential and our break fix. And it took us about a year to finally get the confidence to say no. So we went to all of our break fix customers and we said, hey, this is what we're doing. This is our new plan. These are the benefits. And we had a couple years worth of data. So we said, this is about on average what you spend. And we kind of averaged it out with about a 10, 20% increase, saying, you know, here, this is what you're going to pay. You're going to know what you're going to pay. And at the time, everyone said you have to do 3-year contracts, right? So this is like back in like 2018, 2019. Right. No one signed a 3-year contract. So we didn't convert very many people at the time, which, truth be told, now we don't do contracts. We're month to month, which we can kind of talk about culture a little bit and why here in a minute. And so we didn't. So then we thought, well, crap. Now we're failing and we don't know what to do. So we kept doing the break fix stuff. And then what we would find is there were periods where we get really busy and we didn't have enough people. And so we would hire someone and then we'd have a lull period for 3 or 4 months and we'd lose a bunch of money and we'd let someone go or come to part-time. And then we'd get really busy, and then that guy got a different job or whatever. It was unsustainable.
Right.
And so finally, after seeing this for about a year and seeing the waves, and we kind of knew that those existed, but in transitioning to MSP and with the extra growth and everything else, we did a hard stop and we said, okay, no more walk-ins, period. So when businesses would call us, we finally told them, said, hey, you know, we told you a year ago where we were going. Now we're just not doing it, period. You get one courtesy call, billed at our new hourly rate. We jacked up our hourly rate. We were billing $75 an hour at the time. We jacked up to $125 an hour. You know, we'll service you once and that's it. You get this one-time service to make a decision if you want to go with us or not. Huh. What also made it interesting is that, and it almost feels, I almost feel bad because it kind of feels like a bait and switch, is that we put the other 2 competitors we had in town out of business. So we put them out of business, and then we all of a sudden said, we're not going to do break fix anymore.
I don't know. I wouldn't look at that as bait and switch as far as I would look at it as being most competitive and successful. We were really competitive in the break fix arena. You know, we did really good service. We had the staff to help people right away. But you get to a point where you get big enough that it's not feasible to keep doing that. Mm-hmm. It's an unsustainable business model.
Yep.
Unsustainable and unpredictable.
The other thing, Rob, you said, like, what's the transition look like? I remember back when we were like $300,000 in revenue or $500,000 in revenue, thinking, man, we can't afford some of these tools. Like, it was crazy. Like, we went with RedRoot because it was sub-dollar per endpoint. We're like, oh, we can't afford stuff like Proofpoint. It's $2 per user. These little things. And I almost think that we got lucky because we kind of went on the cheap side a little bit. Now I look back and I look at our security stack now, and I'm like if we're not doing like the most expensive, like we're doing, not that the most expensive is the best tool, right? But we are not, cost is irrelevant to us. It's all about delivery of a good service.
Yeah.
And risk and liability mitigation for yourself, quite frankly.
Risk mitigation.
Yeah. But it's something that I think that people lose, right? Because you ask people like, oh, what antivirus should I use? And I'm going to use that because it's the most hotly debated topic in the world. And when you're growing or your team is small, it's hard to justify that extra dollar when you're saying, man, I've got 100 computers. That's an extra $100 a month. And you're barely making ends meet as it is. And you got this other guy saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And they're over $1 million, and it really doesn't affect their bottom line a whole lot. I feel like that as we grow, we lose perspective. And the hive mind in our community is very great, but I think sometimes people forget that perspective, right? So what you can do at your size. So my biggest thing would be for people that are transitioning is making sure that you get right fit tools, right size tools, but don't stick with them as you grow.
Agreed. It's a progressive process, right? Just like anything else.
And that allows you to price competitively so that you can grow.
So
Well,
as you were growing, were you the primary salesperson?
we grew organically. Like there was no sales.
Okay.
People were just knocking on our door.
Okay. So were you a referral system? Were you doing anything? Did the residential get you into the business side? Like you didn't grow because you hung a shingle, right? It was your experience. It was the experience with the people that you worked with, and then they referred friends. So like, how did that kind of work out for you? Did you do anything to cultivate that?
No. And in fact, it was growing so fast that we kind of, it almost got away from us.
Okay. So you grew because you delivered such a great result that word of mouth started spreading. And so that was your marketing effort.
Yeah. But we hit a wall, right? So as I said, we're in a town of 3,500 people.
Mm-hmm.
But when we hit 850,000, we hit a wall.
Okay.
Right. There was not really any more room for us to grow here. The businesses that want to work with us are the ones that were willing to work in our MSP model. We've signed them. We dominated the market in a 60-mile radius. That became very challenging because then, as you said, we tried to take on the sales and marketing roles. So we started going to other communities in our state. I'm in Nebraska, and tried to grow our business.
Like in a satellite office sort of way, like in your typical satellite bubble office.
Yeah. However, we tried joining chambers, all kinds of things. And Nebraska is actually kind of a really cruel state because that amounted to nothing. And I wasted a lot of money trying to grow inside of Nebraska at these areas. Basically, it came down to was if you don't have an office and you're not here, like actually here, we don't want to work with you.
Right.
Sounds like it's very much an area that you got to be part of the community and embed yourself in the community.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's good Nebraska culture, and I respect that, but I resent it at the same time.
it's hard to grow.
So as far as sales, but I to speak to that now, we have a satellite office in Denver, and we are doing a lot of efforts in that direction.
When did you start your Denver side?
About a year ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Very cool.
So do you manage that more from a remote standpoint, or do you actually spend some time out there?
We travel. We travel typically twice a month to do sales calls, meetings, and service clients that are there. But it's no different than starting a business brand new. Like it's
from scratch. Yeah. You just have better processes. Some.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And you got money to kind of throw at
it. Yeah, that's very true. Yep, that's true as well.
So, but yeah, no, so that's been good, and to talk about that is probably a whole nother episode, to be honest, way to do that. But I would honestly tell you that sales is probably, we kind of lucked out and that we grew organically by word of mouth. If I had to give any piece of advice to someone trying to grow their business, it's something that it took us very long to figure out, is make sure you nail down your niche. Because we trying to grow, we're like, we can service everyone. And you can try to, but at no point do you differentiate yourself.
Right. The unique selling proposition that makes it hard.
Yeah.
It's always tough as you're getting started. You need the cash, right? It's the chicken and the egg in that regard.
Yep.
You need the cash, so you take the business, but then at some point that business becomes no longer the right business for you.
Yes, and that's a very hard transition as well. And so one thing too is just figuring out which vertical you want to serve and understand your customer better than they know themselves.
Well, fellas, that kind of brings us up to the end of this episode here. Travis, I really want to thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. For anybody that is looking to get in touch with Travis, his information will be on LinkedIn. We'll include his profile with the podcast. And also this episode will be on mspbusinessschool.com and on YouTube. Travis, Brian, before we go, any parting words of wisdom for the people out there that are, maybe trying to like get into that new satellite office or, trying to grow their business?
Make sure you're ready for it, because once you start down that path, there's no going back. Or you're going to waste a lot of money. So one, make sure that you're ready for it. Mm-hmm. But two, if anyone has any questions or is interested in any of that, I am more than willing to entertain a conversation with people trying to grow their business. So I guess the second piece is be coachable. I've always had a coach growing my business. Since the first year I started, I've always hired at a minimum of one coach.
Oh,
and,
cool.
and through most of that, I've had two or more.
We hear that often. It's, between the peer groups and the coaching, everybody needs somebody to help them rise up. Everybody needs somebody to help them stay on track, and you need a sounding board. And, I agree completely. I know you do too, Rob. Key components there. And
huge believer in it.
My closing thought would be, when I listen to Travis's story and others we've listened to, also listen to what's happening as you go through life. If the big thing I caught out of the story today, Travis, is every step you took was in response to something you were feeling, facing, or needing to do as you built your company. It was kind of, there was thought, that critical thinking that happened at each juncture, maybe except for joining the Navy. But even there, it sounded like a good conversation. Help kind of narrow you in there, and listen to those things and critically think through them. It generally will get you in the right direction.
And unfortunately, Brian, we didn't get to touch on a lot. We didn't talk about, when I fired my partner and why. I mean, there's a lot of things that gut.
Ooh, that's a good episode right there. That would be a good episode that we should definitely talk about. We'll have Travis back
there.
That's a good one.
That was a story he shared when I last talked to him, but that's also a very personal story. So, you've got to be open to that one.
Yeah, no, I'm more than willing to share that, because people go, that is one of the most, it's a hard thing. It's worse than getting a divorce. I've done both.
Yeah, that's a painful lesson that people would really want to hear, because like a lot of business owners out there have a partner, and maybe they're a little cranky about it, right? But they don't know what to do, right? That's a really good episode for the future. I definitely agree, Travis. Thank you for that one.
Yep.
Yeah. Rob, if I can, one more thing, and I apologize.
Sure. No, of course, please.
Self-care. And so I think another thing that Brian heard me mention is I started doing therapy. So EMDR therapy specifically. I feel like as entrepreneurs, so much we don't take care of ourselves, and you can't build your business or do anything unless you're taking care of yourself first. And I know it sounds selfish, but it's that old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup.
And that's really the episode we need to have, because I will say this, it was funny when Travis admitted to self-care, it became like one of those rooms all of a sudden where those of us who have also engaged in therapy and continue to engage in therapy all stood up. It was so almost important. It was amazing. It was probably 30% of the room had, adopted a self-care regimen that included therapy. And it's critical. I mean, we talk about coaching and we talk about performance coaching. Well, this is really just coaching of the mind.
Yeah.
And coaching 100%. Of the attitude, and making sure that you can keep yourself on target, both personally, mentally, if you're spiritual, that side of it too. But, emotionally, it can be the biggest challenge that we all face. And, that's what I really, when you told that story, and we'll definitely have you back to talk about that one, Travis, because it took me back. It struck me on two chords, right? One, I felt for you for the story you shared that led you there, of course. But then it was like, that's the good that comes out of it, right? It starts something that can be brought into your life long term. So, again, that vulnerability and sharing is what we're trying to bring more of into this industry, because it's a tough industry. It's 24/7 problems. Yeah. You wake up, the day's sunny, everything's great, and you walk in and somebody's got a ransomware attack, right? It goes sideways so quick. You need to have some balance.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I would love to share that, because I feel like that's critical, because I was the guy, until I went to therapy, I'll never go to therapy.
Yeah,
Me
I think
too.
every man in the world says the exact same thing.
It only took me 45 years to figure it out.
That's right. That's right.
No, and I appreciate you guys' time, and I know I keep talking and rambling on.
No. What we're going to do, Travis, is we're going to take a step back. Let's close out this episode, but let's definitely say this. You will be coming back. And I think, Rob, one of the things that we have to plan for next quarter is definitely having a big conversation with some people that are willing to share about mental health, maybe put together a special hour on it.
Oh, yeah, Brian, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It's really something that in this industry, any industry, I mean, any walk of life has those challenges, but in this industry, it's been a bunch of, it's so male dominated. It's so, I can get through this, white knuckle.
And we're taught that. Yeah. Put up the walls, you're fine. Bring your shield up, you're good. Yeah. I totally agree. I think this is our best cliffhanger episode we've ever done in the history of the show.
Yeah, we as two dumb sales guys, we love to
That's right. We
tie everything into a nice little bow at the end, right? All right, guys.
Travis, Brian, I really appreciate it, fellas. I'm really looking forward to the next episode that we're going to be doing as well. And as always, guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. All right, take care.
Thanks, Travis.